let me just say hi, everyone on Instagram. Hello, Raymond. Welcome. My name is Nick Adams. I'm a New York City-based playwright and theater maker. And since 2017, I have served as the producing director of the Exponential Festival, overseeing its grant writing, reporting, and fundraising activities, as well as its establishment as a 501c3. And with me on this Instagram Live is a startup sound of a laptop, apparently.
Yeah, sorry. My laptop is acting really funny these days. It just automatically turned on. Sorry. Go ahead, Nick.
Wow. the what are they called? The gremlins. The gremlins are here with us, which is good. Hopefully they are friendly tech gremlins. Welcome. I want to say welcome. This is Kyoung Park. And I'm going to read a little bio from Kyoung. Kyoung is a North Korean writer and theater maker, born and raised in Santiago, Chile, currently living in Brooklyn, New York. As artistic director of Kyoung's Pacific Beat, he has written and directed 4 full-length plays, the names of which are Disoriented, TALA, PILLOWTALk, and NERO, and created over 40 community-based experimental projects, including performances for new media. His work centers the stories of immigration, queerness, trauma, and the way these intersect in communities of color. He's published in 7 contemporary plays from the Korean Diaspora in the Americas by Duke University Press, and he's been featured in ABC News, Univision, Lambda Literary, Howlround, the Brooklyn Rail, and the Korea Times. I'm going to go into detail a little bit about our relationship, Kyoung. 2 of these works that I just mentioned, the plays PILLOWTALk and the mini-series NERO, have been presented with the Exponential Festival. Kyoung, you sat down for an interview with Alex Tatarsky, who we've also presented. And in that book of exponential artist interviews, you described PILLOWTALk, our first collaboration, as a, quote, gay bedroom drama between an Asian American and an African American man whose sort of long day's journey into that night becomes about race and class and internalized racism and homophobia and how they liberate themselves from that internalized oppression. It's kind of like a love story turned into a ballet, which is literally, it turns into a ballet. It's this beautiful piece. Kyoung has described the piece that we're talking about now, NERO, as a, quote, much longer epic about George W. Bush's war on terror that we retell as the story of the rise and fall of Nero's Roman Empire. And because of the pandemic, this very big Shakespearean epic has become a 5-part miniseries that we shot as a film project. Welcome, Kyoung Park, to this Instagram Live, and welcome to those in the chat. Hello, hello. Congratulations on the world premiere of NERO.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you so much. It's so exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just, you know, you've made quite a name for yourself as a person making, you know, things in Zoom grids with green screens and Neros. So I just have to ask before we get started, how's my lighting? How's my frame?
Your lighting is great. I see you very well. Thank you. I hope my lighting is good too here. And yeah, I'm that's as much as I can say about lighting right now.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Good to know. No, your lighting looks great. My first question for you is kind of like nuts and bolts. The 5 acts of NERO are currently streaming on a beautiful new website through June 30th. Will you give the people watching and the people who watch this later when we publish it as a video, will you give a short description of what the project is and how people can experience it?
Sure. NERO is a 5-part miniseries, and it's about George Bush's war on terror retold as a political satire about the rise and fall of Nero's Roman Empire. We've premiered this Monday, and it's available on our website, kyungspacificbeat.org. We've built a screening room that you can access for free, and it'll have all of NERO available through the end of this month. Yeah.
Cool. And I've been on the website. It's beautiful. It's colorful. It's got great images from not only NERO, but from other works that your company's presented. yesterday. So was it on Monday I
Yeah.
joined you for a screening party for Act One of Nero. And yesterday, I biked around and listened to Act Two as a radio play, which is another option for people. It was so wonderful, and the performances are so good. Um, I've been following your work pretty intuitively since I saw Pillow Talk at LaGuardia's Rough Draft Festival in 2018, which is actually just down the street from where I'm living now. Um, but something dawned on me on Monday while I was watching Act One of Nero, and it speaks to this desire. And it's a desire I had as a young theater maker. I wonder about your history with this impulse. But, you know, it speaks to this impulse I had as a young person to make a difference with my art. And it seems like with many of your projects, you want your art to move society in a different direction, or you want to provide a running commentary of the changes you see, to expand empathy, to create peace, which is part of the mission of Kyoung's Pacific Beat. So, um, you know, I want to know about your history with this impulse to, you know, have art make a difference in society or civilization. Where did that start?
Yeah. Um, I think, you know, I came of age as a writer in New York City, witnessing 9/11 and its aftermath. So the story that I often share is about how I became politicized as an artist in New York during those times where New York was full of anti-war protests during the Bush presidency. And I was, you know, a part of a community of people, both in theater and in public, that was very vocally opposed to the war. And a lot of my writing and training has been in theater making, but also in peace studies, because um, that movement work in my late teens, early 20s still kind of informs the work that I do today. Um, this is maybe the fourth or fifth 9/11 piece that I've written. This war in particular, you know, kind of shaped my young adult life. So I think when I wrote Nero, I wanted to write my last play about the war because I had written so many of them, and it just became this monstrous piece. Yeah, and that's Nero.
Yeah. Yeah. And something I love about the approach that you take to this work, you know, that has a sort of civic purpose. You know, part of um, your training, and you said you studied peace studies. You also studied, you know, Bawal's Theater of the Oppressed. You worked with Mabu Mine's Lee Brewer.
Mhm.
When I see your work, I sometimes feel it has a kinship or resonance with Charles Ludlam's work. Um, I just love, and I can't stress this enough, that like this piece is fun, it's funny, it's campy, it's irreverent, it's satirical, it's sexy, it's violent, it's, you know, it's got like a lot of, you know, genre going on through it.
Yeah.
um I guess one question for you, a simple question, is like, what's your favorite running gag in the film? And maybe we can talk about just style and genre for a moment.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. Um, my favorite running gag is, I think, the fact that I I think this is it, it's the irreverence of this play. It's the complete irony of creating the most um, violent piece that a peacemaking theater company could make,
No
and just
kidding.
embracing it. Yeah, it's savage, and we know it is, and somehow yeah, we are just giving ourselves the permission to really look at violence for what it is and finding ways to do it through performance in a way that is not, you know, ultimately actually causing harm, but allowing us to look at violence for what it is. Yeah.
You know, as you're saying this, I'm remembering like from my bike ride yesterday, I was listening to Dave Gell's performance of Nero, and they're talking about the war, I think with the Parthians, is that
Yes,
correct from
the
the script?
Parthians.
They're talking about war with the Parthians, and Dave, as Nero, says, maybe I should just give a concert. Like, you know, maybe that's the answer, right? Which is
Yeah,
like, and I think he says something like it boosts morale or it raises spirits or something. And, you know, you can hear that as an emperor is also plotting a war and think, oh my gosh, how ridiculous. But as a young man, I remember that post 9/11, there were these series, multiple series of
yeah,
concerts that were meant to kind of, I don't know, I think in the, you know, in the most generous spirit I can muster, you know, trying to have a, provide a sense of unity
yeah,
for the United States of America. But literally, the backdrop to those concerts was the Iraq War and the War on Terror.
yeah. Well, there was a lot of political theater back then, for sure, yes.
Yeah.
And there's, I think, some difference to be made about the entertainment that's there to distract the masses. Like, I'm thinking of the ways the Colosseum was a form of entertainment versus the kind of artistry that Nero oddly was kind of like a proponent of. Nero's a 14-year-old tyrant. There is very
Mhm.
little to like about a character that I think psychologically these days we'd call a psychopath.
Yeah.
Um, but he was someone that also attempted to be an artist, and it was in a certain way something that I found a connection to, so that I wouldn't completely dehumanize this character,
Yeah.
right? And it's ridiculous because his artistry was rigged. He speaks about this concert where he wins 1,808 awards that are arranged for him. You know what I mean? Like, he
Right.
wasn't a good artist. He was
Yeah.
he wasn't but it was also he was also someone who was making art at a time where art wasn't considered valuable. It was considered lowly, like prostitution.
Uh-huh.
Um, so, um, so yeah, there's kind of like these odd cultural sort of like contradictions about his character.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that we latched onto to build some sort of understanding of who Nero could be as a human that we could relate to as artists, and then also something that we definitely kind of indict by the end of it. Because his last words when he died were, "What an artist dies with me." Um,
Oh,
like he,
which is how he saw
he
himself,
that's
I guess, right?
how he saw himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Uh, Go ahead.
No, no, no. I mean, I'm having all sorts of associations with this. Hi, Max. Welcome. Um, I'm having all sorts of associations because, of course, like George W. Bush, we don't see him a lot in public anymore, but we do see, like, the only thing we hear about him are his watercolors and his, you know, he's doing a gallery show. Hi, Claudio. Welcome. Claudia Acosta
Hi,
from the cast of
Claudia.
Nero just joined us. Um, and I was going to ask you about that because there's this kind of, you know, I think you and I come from a similar milieu in terms of this kind of experimental performance lineage and this study of and practice of this lineage. Um, Conventional actor training would have you believe that you cannot judge the character you're playing,
Mm.
right? That you have to find something to defend in the character. You have chosen to center this story around a petulant teenage Roman emperor. And I think hi David, welcome. I just want to hear more about, like, when did you realize that you were writing this story that centered on Nero, and was that a surprise to you when you were conceiving of it or writing it?
Yeah. Um, I think uh, I started writing this play in graduate school, and I had attempted to write a 9/11 play beforehand, and I ended up writing a family drama inspired by my family's immigrant history instead. So I knew when I was writing this play that I had a play in me about the war that I needed to get out, but I couldn't find a way to tell it. And somehow, the story of Nero came up in conversation in one of my playwriting classes with Chuck Mee. And around that time, I was also interning for Young Jane's company when they were producing Lear.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I owe a lot to that moment of, I don't know, working in Young Jean's company as an intern and figuring out a way to tell this story where I found, I guess, a metaphor. And
Yeah.
the metaphor was telling this story about war, but through the story of Nero's Roman Empire, so that there was enough of a distance through which I had creative license to say the things I wanted to say, and to do it from a place that felt safe. And the reason why I say safe is because this play really goes into the psyche and the minds of a ruling class of people that decided back in the 2000s who lived and who died.
Yeah.
None of us are those kind of people. I can't write from autobiography how you decide why you go to war and how to enact war and how to justify violence. Those aren't the kind of decisions or experiences I have as a human being. But that was the kind of mindset and thinking I wanted to go into. And you know, in hindsight, I kind of also feel like there was a Shakespearean epicness to this story that I've held on to. And I think it's because I was also at that time very obsessed with the West Wing. And I feel like maybe that has transmuted into the kind of storytelling structure of this piece. And Aaron Sorkin spoke a lot about how, you know, when he wrote The West Wing, it was his way of writing modern day Shakespearean characters, rulers, kings and queens that make decisions for society in a way that ordinary people cannot.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I guess those were maybe like early influences for how this piece came to be. Yeah.
Wow. I what do they call it? Palace intrigue.
Yeah.
There's like a little bit of that in Sorkin. I'm also thinking about, as we're talking about, like, how does a ruling class decide who lives or dies, and why do we go to war? I'm thinking of, you know, you've like, with the language in this film, you've very carefully replaced certain signifiers from the War on Terror with inventions that are like pretty Looney Tunes, like
Yeah.
like weapons of mass destruction becomes weapons of
Weapons of complete pandemonium.
yeah, which is like something you can imagine Bugs Bunny saying or something. Like, it's completely silly and ridiculous, but in a way that like draws the viewer's attention to the allegory, right? Who are the targets of this satire?
Yeah.
I want to ask you about length a little bit. The piece is split into 5 parts. You've called it a mini series. How and why did endurance or duration become important to you for this project? And when did you realize it was not going to be a 90-minute evening length play? And what did that realization feel like?
Yeah. I mean, early on, this play was a monstrosity. I think it was always this long.
Mm.
And then about 2 years into doing stage readings and table work around the piece, uh, every time, and we did readings for about 2 years, every time we did a reading, my goal was to cut it. And every time we read it, it would gain another 30 minutes, 40 minutes. So, but I was cutting the pages. It's just that in performance, in action, everything began to take time. And that's when I realized that this was just an epic kind of play. I also felt like it was okay for this to be this long because a lot of theaters produce Shakespeare. And I always just thought, hey, any theater that produces Shakespeare could replace their Shakespeare play with this play, right?
Sure.
Like, you know, there are very massive plays produced by theater companies. Like, this could just be a part of that.
Uh-huh.
But then the way we wanted to cast it was, you know, non-conventional. And a lot of theaters that express interest would say, well, we'll do it, but our ensembles are only, you know, they're not as diverse as what you want. So
Yeah.
so then all of a sudden, you know, the Shakespeare kind of companies that could produce, you know, 4 or 5 hour long shows, they just didn't have the kind of ensembles that I was looking for.
Yep.
And that's when the idea of maybe producing this sort of came about. And it was just because of the way we wanted to represent the characters through performance. Yeah, from a racial lens. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
you got, sometimes you got to do it yourself.
Well, I mean, it wasn't ideal.
Yeah.
But after we did Pillow Talk and Exponential and Pillow Talk kind of getting a good reception, I thought this is probably the one and only shot we'll have to do something so massive is if we follow Pillow Talk with this thing that has been impossible to get other theaters to make. And that's yeah, just how it all kind of came to be.
Yeah. Well, like I said to you after Monday's viewing, it's very rare and special to see something that's like in form, in content, and in production is made with such enormous care and collaboration. I think we often hear about form and content. We don't often hear about the integrity of production, and you do that exceedingly well.
Thank
I mean, in your bio, I mentioned that your company has produced 4 shows and done 4 community engagement
Yeah.
events. So I know that's where your heart is as a maker.
Yeah.
I want to talk a bit about if it's okay with you to talk about the dissolution of the legal structure. Is that all
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Sure.
So as NERO is your company's final project in this current legal structure of a 501c3. You're dissolving the nonprofit, and in your announcement you wrote, the time for change has come. And you also wrote about Howard Gardner's study of creative cycles, in which he argues that artists undergo peaks and valleys every 10 years. I have observed that many, many, many of my favorite artists have had moments where they've had to, due to underfunding and burnout and volunteer labor and change the pace of their work, the style of their work, reinvent themselves. I mean, I don't know if you saw this morning, but we announced that Teresa Bukaiser is leaving New York City. Yeah, in September.
Wow.
And we'll return to produce the 2025 Exponential Festival. We're working on a leadership transition plan to begin February of next year. So we have some time, but something is changing, something shifting. It recalls to me the environmentalist Paul Kingsnorth is writing in 2018 about Hindu cosmology. And he says, for example, that he sees time circling through 4 great cycles or yugas, each of which lasts many tens of thousands of years, and each of which becomes progressively more fragmented before the cycle begins again. He says the winding down of one age sows the seeds of the next, which is often its antithesis. So I want to know, Kyoung, on the precipice of this dissolution and this great change and revolution for your company, but also asking for a friend, are there seeds that, taking that metaphor a step further from Paul Kingsnorth, the seeds that are sown that are the antithesis of the current moment? Are there seeds that you're aware of now that give you hope for yourself as an artist? Are there seeds that give you hope as a newly minted American citizen, as a member of artistic communities in New York City?
Yeah.
Feel free to answer any of those in whatever order.
Yeah, sure. I think there's three three sort of currents of thinking that I am trying to parse through. The first one is, uh, 2 years ago when we finished workshopping Nero, Biden withdrew the troops from Afghanistan, and then a year later we've entered, this genocide in Palestine. The wars that we're fighting have changed, and I think our company's response to it has been very much fixed on past history that now almost feels nostalgic. And there is something that we need to change quite drastically in order to be in tune with the times.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, I feel like form announces itself, and in a sense, I can't think of the most white supremacist theater business model than the nonprofit model.
Yeah.
So, along with dismantling white supremacy as the theme for Nero, I feel like organizationally our structure should reflect those intentions as well. So I feel like as we conclude Nero, the business form's conclusion and dissolution is part of what we've been trying to do as artists, even just through the telling of this play. Um, what's going to happen next, I think, is still in the air for me. And I have ideas of what's possible, but I have to be honest. I'm still going through a process of grief. It's been, a 12-year long haul to get this done. And, I'm excited people are getting to finally see it, and for people that may not have heard of us, their introduction to this piece began on Monday.
Right.
I have been carrying this, for over a decade and for
Right.
4 years in earnest. And I'm excited to see how people respond. I'm excited to see how people will react to by the time they watch all 5 episodes and see the ending of this piece.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that we're speaking about now that I think speaks to how this story begins. By the time I feel we get a critical mass of people and to view the ending of it, I think the conversations we have about Nero will be quite
Yeah.
different, Yeah, yeah.
Hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You've made, an incredibly rich piece of art that is available for anyone to view online for free, on demand, in different formats. On Monday, we heard from Claudia Alec, who's, has a focus of work in accessibility. I learned that the piece will be available with English captions for the entirety of the piece. I know that you can listen to it as a radio play. You can watch it as a video. It's stunning. It's beautiful. I was texting with Exponential alumni Allison Dwyer last night, who was watching it for the first time, and I was getting play-by-play of like, this aesthetic is so awesome. So for those of you watching, and for those of you watching in the future, through June 30th, go to the website and watch those videos. Kyung, will you just give a brief reminder of how people can watch it?
Sure, yes. Nero is available on our website, kyungpacificbeat.org. Check in through our screening room page. We have a brief form that we're requesting folks to fill out just so that we get a sense of who's watching our show. But all the content will be accessible for free in different formats through the end of this month till June 30th. So hope you guys enjoy.
Yeah. I just before we log off, want to say that we made our announcement today of Teresa's departure in September, and we also I see a little note in the chat from my dear sweet mother. Hi, Mom. Can you spell the website, please? I will type it up and put it in the description of this video for people who want to just click. It is also if you go to Kyung's profile from which he's joining this Instagram Live, which is Kyung's Pacific Beat, people can probably find the link in your bio. Is that correct,
Yes.
Kyung? Okay,
Yes. Link in the bio for sure.
cool. um, just lastly saying, for those of you still watching, on Saturday, July 20th, we're throwing a birthday party for Exponential at Brick Ox to celebrate our 10th birthday and our final Exponential under the direction of Teresa Bucheister. You can RSVP at the link in our bio. Kyung, thank you so much for hopping on. And I can't wait to, take in the rest of Nero, to see you tomorrow for the little party.
Yes.
And congratulations on your work.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you so much. And special thanks to those who worked on this project that are here with us. Thanks, Claudia. Thank you, Marie. Marie, it was our animator along with Yoon Choi for Nero. She did such an incredible job for the past 2 months, and we couldn't have done this without Marie. Joe, I think maybe you're here as well, worked with both you and I, Nick, on our community engagement over the course of the pandemic. It was an incredible team effort, and we are so proud to share this work with you. Yeah.
Great. Well, congratulations on all your work to those in the chat and to anyone watching in the future from the Nero team. Kyung, have a good afternoon. And to those who joined us, thanks for tuning in. Bye, folks.
Bye.